All right, guys. Hey, welcome to HarvestingStrength.com. Right now, we're going to talk about one of my clients, Leo. He is a 165-pounder. He's competing August 1st, so it's next weekend, and he's going to be attempting some big lifts. To kind of overview what we're talking about right here is a young powerlifter I knew when I was coaching high school powerlifting, and he competed very well, state contender, did all these great things, and he was on a strong team. Right now, he is at the point where he's trained for about 9 to 10 weeks. This isn't really the peak we're looking for per se. Not to say that he won't achieve great things, but basically we connected, built a relationship, and we want to grow his lifts over time. We just chose this meet to see where he was and to kind of do a little bit of a premature peaking phase over about 9 to 10 weeks. Some of the things that are outlined in this video are things that we did before, well, rather at the beginning, and then it built up over time. So you're seeing a little bit of the beginning, very little bit of the middle point, but the biggest thing you're going to see is the last couple weeks of training, lots of various movements, and more importantly, we're going to talk about the squat. I've posted a deadlift video, bench video, and now I want to do a squat video. Squats, I know at least for me, relatively, it's been tough. Personally, it's just kind of a rough motion, I guess, for my frame. But I know for people who are like myself, who might suffer from the squat or might have a hard time with the squat, maybe there's some things in this video that you can use to your advantage. Essentially, what we're looking at is, you're going heavy loads. Could be a lot of wear and tear. I know there's a lot of popular programs. We've seen, one of the biggest ones that started things off, plenty of years before. People like myself at my age is like the 5-3-1, that Wendler 5-3-1, where you go for 5 reps, next month 3 reps, and then the last month 1 rep. And people will talk about 5x5, 5x3, 5x1, and that volume could be maybe a little bit for people, depending on, I guess, how you work it and implement it. And I know that some people might think that, to build their squat, they have to do a lot of squats. And I'm here to say that from someone who personally does not enjoy squatting, not to say I don't do my legs, there are a lot of different ways and approaches that you can build your squat without having to put too much volume on yourself. Some of the things that are going to be outlined in this video are the cluster sets. It's a lot of things that you'll see with some of the greatest minds like Josh Bryant, where they're working a tremendous amount of sets for a specific rep range. So instead of doing 4 sets of 6, why don't we flip it to 6 sets of 4 and do low rest intervals. Now what's happening with this is those low rest intervals are causing the fatigue to set in. So let's say you're a 600-pound squatter and you're doing a 6x4 exercise with the squat, and you're only able to do maybe 405, 425. Not to say you are, or percentage-wise you would, but let's just say like that's all you can handle. Maybe on paper you're thinking, wow, if I'm squatting 600 and I'm only doing 400 or 425 pounds and fatigued, that could be a problem. In reality, that's not the case, because those rest intervals are so low, which is going to cause you to be a part of such a big metabolic state to where you're going to grow and develop tremendously. And nice thing about it is you're not having to put too much weight on your back relatively. Now, if you're a 500-pound squatter, putting 400, 425, 435 for several sets, that might seem like that's a big percentage relatively, but in the end, what I was talking about in that previous comment was utilizing those cluster sets as more of a metabolic trigger for growth and development at the beginning stage of your program, and that might be something that's a little bit easier load-wise on you, to where your body doesn't have to suffer as much. Another thing we talked about, or that we're going to show you in the video, besides that cluster mentality to begin with, is band work, whether it's band resisted or band assisted. The nice thing is, as you descend with the squat bar, the load gets lighter, but then as you ascend upward, the load gets heavier. So at the bottom part of your lift, where most people suffer, maybe not everybody, but most people who suffer from that, they can work to accelerate through the lift, and it might be a little bit easier on the body in that sense. So you're working the heavier aspect on your lockout, but then the lighter part on your bottom of your lift, which most people I've worked with have that bottom deficits, where at the bottom of their squat they struggle, but then as elevate and ascend with the bar, then it gets better. That band resisted or assisted movement helps to work and stimulate and engage you with a harder lockout. And then near the end, we're talking about the peaking phase. He goes for 505 for a single at 165, or his body weight's 165. He goes for 505 for a single, goes really well. And then we show afterwards a heavy walkout, some isodynamics, and some other things as well. Personally, my favorite thing to do with a client is the isodynamics near the end at the peaking phase. I know I'm talking about a lot of stuff on the front end of the video, but what I'll talk about during the video is how isodynamics are such a tremendously important aspect of your program that I think maybe not many people use. To summarize real quick, to kind of give you a sneak peek, the isodynamics, or the way I terminize it, the isodynamics is it's an isometric movement followed by a dynamic movement. And I like to define the dynamic aspect of the movement to be a lower percentage, a submax percentage. I'm not really someone who's fond of being strict on certain percentages. I'm rather more about the RPE. Now, if my clients could do better or worse based off that, I mean, they're trusting me and my process believes in the RPE scale. Because I know for a fact that, you know, a couple months ago I could do 450 on bench, but if you ask me to do 405 on paper, that means 405. Maybe that means I could do 4 or 5 reps, but I could maybe do 2, maybe 3 before I give out. But I know that I'm so explosive and so dynamic with the way I lift and how other powerlifters lift that sometimes the percentages aren't really as reliable, but I do believe the percentages are a great reference point. So I do use those at some parts of the programming to get that ready. But nonetheless, to go back to the isodynamics, I really enjoy the isodynamics because you start off with an isometric movement, which is motionless, and I try to get the client to work the isometric at their sticking point. So for him, I'd like him to get the isometric at the quarter squat position. So again, going back to how I'm defining this whole situation, isodynamics, an isometric movement at your sticking point. So it's motionless, you're pushing against the pins as hard as you can. And what that's triggering is PAP, post-activation potentiation. If I can even pronounce it right. Post-activation potentiation, to where you're having to hit that position and your CNS is firing off, and then a dynamic movement afterwards to fly through that sticking position and to make it even better. So let's look at the videos, let's talk about it, and then let's get better, okay? All right, so for the initial part of the strength phase, what we're trying to do is cluster sets. It just means a lot of sets for a rep range of about 4 reps for at least the client I'm working with right here. We're doing a pause at the bottom because I know that when I've watched his movements before, he has a little bit of a strength deficit at the bottom. So we're doing the pause to work on the hip strength and you know, keep developing his squat. But all these several sets at this lower weight and short rest breaks are really creating a metabolic trigger for his growth and development to make him a better lifter. Now in the power phase, we got the band resisted squats. As he gets low, the bands aren't as tense, but then as he comes up, they get more tense. It helps us work with locking out heavier weight and getting a little bit more acceleration with the bar. Now, my favorite part, the isodynamic squats. This is in the championship phase. What you're doing is a couple different things within one set. The first thing you're doing is an isometric push against the pins at your sticking point. For him, that's a quarter squat height. What he'll do is he'll push, and then he can hand the bar off to someone, like he's going to show here, or he could just drop it off by himself, and then he's going to unhook the weight off the hooks up there, 365 pounds, and then go for a quick double. You know, why we choose to do a double, a single, a triple, it just depends on where you are with the program and where it needs to be rep range. But my biggest thing is to people watching this video, you can get this done. Even if you're limited on equipment, I've heard it before in the past by someone. He didn't feel like it was necessary in his program, and I thought it was bogus because this is by far one of the most superior movements you can put in your program. It's all about PAP, post-activation potentiation, and getting that CNS trigger. This right here, the heavy walkouts, mental prep. So what we're talking about that is just walking out with heavy weight and kind of getting your situation right with technique. When you walk out heavy weight, the trick is to take just a couple steps, especially on squat. You go 1, 2. Shuffle your feet side to side a little bit, get yourself comfortable, and then go for your attempt. He's going to go for 515 at a 165 body weight. Comes down, and then boom, gets it. He has a little bit of a stick, or a little bit of a slower part of the acceleration at that sticking point, but I mean, he's still fatigued. He's still working hard, but with a deload, I bet he's going to hit some big numbers pretty soon, especially at his meet coming up here shortly from now. If you have more questions or concerns, check us out, www.harvestingstrength.com. Let's have a conversation. Let's get this thing going. And like I said before, knowledge is key. Knowledge is power. Let's expose it and have some good conversations and keep going. All right, thanks so much. Bye.